What's up, my podcast listeners? This is your host, Rafal Matuszewski, and it's been a while since I've done a full-blown video like this, but, life happens. Here we are, and we're going to get right into it because the last, I would say, 2 years, I've been very much diving deep into this niche of equestrian athletes with Kinstretch. And what's really interesting is this sport has not, both dressage and show jumping, have not been, infiltrated by strength and conditioning in general, but with Kinstretch, absolutely none. That at least I know of. And when you look at that sport for both show jumping and dressage, what's really interesting is that both sports, both style of riding, requires a lot of body control, strength, and the ability to adapt to movement variables. And when you put all those three together, that's quite taxing on the average body. Whereas any other sport, it's usually a pattern repeated over and over and over again. If you look at, say, baseball, and you're a pitcher, you are throwing constantly back and forth time and time again, and you become injured for overuse. And the only, way to fix that is to build a larger capacity or manage your volume. So stepping into the sport of equestrian athletes have been quite a fun experience because there hasn't been that much out there done yet. There are some riders at high levels that are strength training, but what is their strength training? What are they actually doing? So in this episode, I really want to break down what I've been doing with my riders, what I've seen as common trends, where these athletes are missing it when it comes to their own health and not just the horse's health. And I'm going to try to unravel this whole thing in less than 30 minutes, hopefully. So for those who don't know, I primarily do Kinstretch with all my clients, whether you're riding a horse or not, because the common theme, and I'm probably not alone on this one, is that every single person out there is dealing with some sort of pain or capacity issue. The typical person that comes to me has a laundry list of injuries. They've had an on and off injury, like their shoulder, their low back, going on and off again for like the last 10 years, and they can't figure out why their shoulder, low back, knee keeps hurting, and it's a capacity issue. So for those who don't know as well, Kinstretch is a mobility practice backed by scientific research. The creator, Dr. Andrew Spina, literally went through every piece of literature out there when it comes to strength training, rehab, movement, you name it, and organized it into a system better than anyone else I've seen. So once you have a system that you can take someone through and you start seeing results quite quickly, relatively, at least 8 to 12 months, then you're onto something. What traditional strength and conditioning lacks is training in your end range and gaining more mobility, right? In Kinstretch, it's not just you sitting there stretching out your hamstrings for an hour, because that's not how we build resiliency. How we build resiliency is being able to control our bodies in variables. So if I were playing soccer outside and I run, cut, and slip on the grass because it was wet, and my leg slides out to the side, and I've never taken my leg out into abduction that far under load, most likely I'm pulling something because my brain doesn't understand what that position is, and it doesn't understand how to adapt in that scenario. So Kinstretch very much makes you resilient more than anything else. And it works so well combining Kinstretch with strength training, right? If you take the typical person going to the gym, they're doing movements repeated over and over and over again based on what they've seen online, what their friend is doing, what a textbook told them to do when it comes to squatting. And you have to fit in these parameters properly, and you have to squat to a certain depth. And then people start online having arguments of like, oh, that's not 90 degrees of your squat, that's blah, 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 and this and that. But you're leaving a lot on the table when you're only repeating patterns over and over and over and over again. But instead, maybe what we could focus on is taking your body into positions you've never been in, right? Once your brain understands that, sliding your leg out into abduction in its end range is a safe position to be in, you start gaining a little bit more, right? The thing that I always explain to clients is the difference between flexibility and mobility. And these things get like intertwined constantly. And most people, if you ask them, like they know those words and it's really hard for them to define. So when you look at flexibility, it means, can I move a limb, my spine, passively in a far range, right? Typically the scenario that people think about is, a yogi in a class doing a forward bend and their like hands are right onto the ground and their elbows are bending because they are letting gravity take them passively into that stretch. Or you have someone taking someone's leg into a hamstring stretch while they're laying down and you're like, oh my God, you're so flexible because you can take them there. But mobility is being able to take that leg into that same range that someone took you in when they put you in that stretch. Most people lack that. I've worked with many people who are super flexible, but then the moment you ask their body to repeat that movement that you passively took them in, they're nowhere near that range of motion. So what you have is this huge gap between passive and active, and within that is where injury can happen if you don't have control or your brain can't perceive where your shoulder is in space and time because you're reaching behind your car seat to grab something and then your neck starts getting tight and it pulls on you. So Kinstretch is not the end-all be-all, in my opinion, because there's things that people need to work on as well from the strength and conditioning standpoint. But typically, for the general population and for athletes who are looking to improve their performance, Kinstretch is that missing link. So now when we go back into equestrian athletes, the thing that I have seen with everyone I've worked with, they have a huge list of injuries that they've never taken care of. The amount of wear and tear that these people go through is unbelievable. You have this gigantic animal that has so much strength and power, and somehow you get to sit on top of this thing and tell it what to do. And animals tend to never be predictable, right? And you're solely responsible for telling this thing what to do. And if it doesn't go your way, something's going to give, right? A lot of times, too, that I've seen with riders is that every athlete falls into this, is that they think more is better, right? When you look at any other sport, the best teams, the best athletes in the world win their sport because they're able to perform at the highest level because they're not injured, they're not tired, their nervous system can produce that power. The athletes that are usually less educated, they don't have a good coaching staff, or they're doing it on their own to try to get to the pros, are still in that mentality that I have to do more, I need to push more, I need to sweat more, I need to wake up even earlier to work out. I need to do X, Y, and Z. But what people don't understand is that your nervous system regulates everything. If your nervous system can't recover from the stress that you're putting on your body, then you're not going to get the result from it, right? Like most of the time people do too much. All they need is just enough. So then it creates a change biologically and your body can adapt to it, right? The example I always give is like, say I have a brand new client that's never exercised in their entire life. Would it be smart for their first workout that we do 2 sets of 10 of body weight squats, just to work on form, for them to get used to the movement, for them to understand how to maneuver their body into this new thing they've never done before? Or should we do 10 sets of 10 reps with a 50-pound dumbbell and just yell at this individual that you got this, no pain, no gain? Which one is the smarter option? Probably the first option that is less intensive, because that person, if they did that 10 sets by 10 reps of a squat with a 50-pound dumbbell, they are not walking for a week, right? It's volume control. So with equestrian athletes, they are exercising their horse, and they can ride multiple horses per day, per week. And then after years of doing that, they're like, man, my hips are tight. Man, this hurts. My back hurts. My shoulder hurts. Like, it's a volume issue, right? The best athletes in the world are not going, you know what? Tomorrow is competition day. I'm going to do an extra workout the night before. They're not doing that, right? I think the equestrian sport, there's so much for them to grow into. And I've seen this before with golf. I remember when I first started in this industry 15 years ago, strength training for golfers just started kind of getting popular. But it wasn't until Rory McIlroy started to get really into strength conditioning and started getting really good. And out of nowhere, he was on Men's Health magazine front cover, like deadlifting. And the moment that happened, everything switched. Almost probably now every single golfer on the PGA Tour is strength training. But go 30 years ago, it never happened. Some of these guys were like smoking on the golf course still. So now there's this opportunity almost for the equestrian community, where if you know that majority of your competition's not doing a lick of exercise other than training on their horse, you have a huge advantage if you start now. And from my experience with all my clients who do ride, who've been with me for a year, their riding has improved dramatically. And it's so exciting to see this change. And I can't wait to see what the sport evolves to down the road, because that's more opportunity for people to stay in the sport longer, right? Like, if you look at an average professional athlete, they're kind of in their early 20s. But when you look at equestrian athletes, some of them are like well into their 60s. So really, this sport is about longevity. Imagine if you could be pain-free longer. You can do your sport longer. Like that never happens. Like, say if you were a sprinter throughout college and then you go into the pros, like, you're probably going to peak in your sport at like age 23, 24. And then that's it. But then you look at the world of equestrian athletes, you can do it for a very long time and still compete at a high level. So what are you doing for yourself? Because that's the other key that I've seen training all my clients who ride, is they spend so much time and emphasis on the horse, but never on themselves. You know, they kind of like, oh yeah, my shoulder, it's always been like that, but like, I just get through it. Or, you know, my back's always been bad, but, you know, if I just don't do too many horses per week, I'll be fine. That's going to catch up to you. I would say the average age of the rider I train is probably around their early 40s. If you're dealing with aches and pains at 40 and not take care of them, they're probably going to prevent you from riding completely by the time you're 50. Once people understand that, what you do right now is going to influence you how you're going to be able to move in 10 years. That's where shit gets real, right? I'm very fortunate that all the clients that I work with who ride understand this, and they're looking at this as part of their training to be able to excel. So once you understand that, Kinstretch is probably one of the best things just overall for people, but especially people who ride, it's a game changer. I've literally had people where their backs have been sore their entire riding career. They start doing Kinstretch consistently, and out of nowhere, back pain's not there. They can ride more, they can perform better, and it's a complete game changer. Because if you physically can't get onto your horse and feel somewhat comfortable, game over, right? But a couple other things with that is that I find that, especially in dressage, everyone has these common themes. So a lot of these riders have a lot of hip internal rotation, like a lot. Like it's like freakish how far I can move their hip into internal rotation. But then if I let go and then ask them to repeat the motion, it's nowhere near. Like there's a huge gap. And I have a couple riders in my brain right now where I'm thinking about this, when I can take their legs so far into internal rotation and then I put it back down and I can now go lift that thing up to where it was. They're nowhere near where their passive range of motion is. And now if you think about the position that you're on your horse, you need like active, just in general, active control of your hips. Now imagine if I was able to give more active control of your hips while you're riding. Game changer, game changer. And then the other interesting thing too is like all these riders have very limited external rotation of their hip. It's just super stiff, super stiff. So these two characteristics, like I always tell people that if I can improve someone's hip internal and external rotation just in general, literally a lot of things clear up. If you think about human movement, the hips are designed to be super mobile. They should be able to move freely. But once you start restricting access to your hip capsule, then problems arise. Things start compensating, right? In riding, if you have compensations, your horse is going to feel that. If the horse has compensations, you're now like responsible for adapting to that. So if I could give freedom to every single one of your joints to adapt to the movement variable of your horse, again, game changer, right? It's funny because a lot of times I'll hear my clients talk about when they have a riding lesson and their coach is literally like yelling at them to do something with their body and they physically can't. It's not because they're not trying hard enough. It's physically because they don't have access to that anatomy. If you've never trained your body beyond the scope of what you do on your horse, then you're never going to get better in general, right? Going back to my example of the baseball pitcher, if your baseball pitcher is always used to going into external rotation and throwing it forward, maybe you should be taking the shoulder into other positions that it's never moved in before. So then you have more stuff from there. Because if you only get good here, you're now leaving, again, a lot of stuff on the table to be vulnerable, right? You can only get so good at your pattern over and over again. right? Like you're going to hit a ceiling effect, just like riding. You can only get so good until you hit your ceiling effect, and then it's like, what else is there? What else can I do? And a lot of times too, what that I'll explain to my riders is that because you're dealing with pain, that disrupts motor control. And motor control has a huge influence on how you ride. So if you can't control internally what's going on here, what are the chances of you being able to control what's in between your legs that you're trying to maneuver with? Probably pretty slim. Now imagine if you're dealing with low back pain. Your body is literally shutting down the area to protect you. So if you don't have access to all those small stabilizing muscles around your spine to protect you, something else is going to do that, and that's where that tightness comes in, right? So there's so many avenues that my riders and equestrian athletes in general have to like hurdle through. And Kinstretch attacks all those things, right? Another example I've seen with my riders is thoracic mobility. Most of them have a limitation with rotation, right? If you think of that sport, there's no time that you rotate your whole torso as far as possible in one direction and then the other direction. Like, it doesn't happen unless you're falling off your horse in a weird way. So most of them, and I'm not saying all of them, and maybe I'll get to that point later that's in my head, is their lack of thoracic mobility is going to affect other things. So if I have someone that has limited thoracic mobility here, things like their neck and their shoulder is going to compensate for it. And over time, that's going to be an issue. People start getting sore shoulders. People start getting sore necks. And then, if I have a thoracic spine that doesn't move, where's that movement coming from? The low back. And then, if I have hips that don't have enough mobility, that's also going to cause issues to the low back, right? Everything is so connected. And what I've seen is that if I can get my riders with better thoracic mobility, hip mobility, so many things change. So many things change. The riding improves, their overall mood changes, and that's the other key, is that if you're a rider dealing with pain, pain in general sucks out the motivation and quality of life. Now imagine you trying to do the thing that gives you joy, at least I hope it does, of riding, but now you have pain inflicted in your body. That's going to quickly make you almost despise riding. It's going to push away the enjoyment from that sport, and you may even quit. You may even, start hating it and almost despise the idea of waking up early or getting ready for a horse show or whatever it may be, all because you're through pain. In general, if you just look at people dealing with injuries, dealing with pain, like, it's super unmotivating to wake up every day dealing with that. And now if you're trying to add an extra layer of trying to be in a competitive nature, like, that messes up with your head. But imagine if you were pain-free and all your focus is performance. Game changer again. I think that's going to be like the name of this podcast episode. But another thing that I wanted to bring up is, once equestrian athletes understand that movement variability is the key to your sport, it needs to be one of your go-tos. An example of this is that I give the CARS routine, and if you don't know what CARS is, it's an abbreviation for controlled articular rotations, fancy way of saying joint circle. The easiest thing that I give to my clients and that we do in every single session is the CARS routine, because the biggest benefit, there's other benefits that you can argue, but the biggest benefit for me is teaching your brain where you are in space and time. So if I have someone moving their shoulder through all of the ranges it's designed to, your brain maps out all of this space behind you. And the more you do it, the more clearer that map is. So imagine if every single joint in your body fully understands where it is in space and time, then the ability for your body to adapt to any movement variable out there is a game changer. You're telling your horse to go one way, but they're like, F that. You will be able to maneuver your body more effectively and adjust, right? Like, I truly believe human beings, like the species, is designed to adapt to environments. And the way we allow ourselves to adapt to our environments is movement. That's why we're constantly trying to do things active. Like, there's a reason why people are like, oh, I want to go on a hike, I want to go for a walk, I want to go lift something heavy, I want to do a sport. It's ingrained in us to do something active, right? So once you can build a better roadmap of your environment with your joints, you will become so resilient it's ridiculous. Once you have that base of movement variables under your belt, you can build upon it, right? I always tell people, like, Kinstretch is strength training for your joints and connective tissue. But no one trains that unless they get injured, which is so funny to me. Like, you should have that as a continuum in your strength training in general. So I hope that this will inspire all my equestrian athletes that follow me on Instagram or in general online to really look towards building better joint health and movement. And the easiest thing that you can do is literally download my free ebook, right? There's so much information in there when it comes to learning about your body, learning about movement, learning about joint health, flexibility, mobility, and what Kinstretch is. And within that ebook, there's literally the CARS routine, where I have a video of me teaching it, a video of me saying, like, follow me along as we do our CARS routine, and also some Kinstretch workouts that you can do for free. When I train people in person, I have this rule: do Kinstretch once a week. That's all it is. That's all you need to do to see a change. The other day I had a new client ask me, how fast am I going to feel better? And I haven't had this question for a while, which is kind of funny, but literally in a month, if you started doing Kinstretch every day, like a full workout for 1 hour, and the CARS routine every single day, in 1 month you would already feel better, because your nervous system, like I said before, understands your environment better. It also has blood flow going into the joint. You have a lot more synovial fluid going through your joints, and that's going to make you feel better right away. And then at that 3-month mark, you've already built a good foundation. You are now utilizing everything you've built in that foundation that first month to work. And now your body wants more. And then when you hit a year of consistent movement with Kinstretch, you are a whole other person. You probably don't have pain. It feels good to move. You're more motivated. And now with that motivation, you want more. And that's the cool thing about exercise in general, is that when you start seeing progress, it gets addictive and you want to do more of it because you know it's going to make you feel better. So the easiest thing that I'm going to tell everyone here watching or listening is to literally go onto my website, ironcladbody.com, go into the store and download my free ebook. Or if you're on Instagram and I have a clip of this, literally go click my bio and I have the direct link there that you can start today. Easy. I'm going to leave it at that. Hopefully this was informative and helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Always happy to answer any questions. Oh man, I can't even speak anymore. That's it for me. Until next time.